Going back in your career, you started out as Helen Coford, and you were in films in the 40s, and then one particular one, the first version that sticks in my mind, of course, is Mighty Joe Young, working with Ben Johnson and Robert Armstrong and all of that, and I think that's been a picture that's really held up over the years. Talk a little bit about your career going into Mighty Joe Young and your work on that picture.
Well, I started, believe it or not, at 10 years old in a picture called Maryland. I played Walter Brennan's granddaughter, and I went on playing other actresses as children, or playing Cary Grant. I played his daughter. I played the daughter of Victor Mature. 10 years later, I played opposite him. And he said, yes, in 10 years from now, you'll play my mother. But I really enjoyed Mighty Joe Young because the people who made it, Robert Armstrong was just great to work with, who did King Kong, of course, but Marion C. Cooper and Ernest J. Schoedsack, the producer and the director, they did King Kong and Chang and Chi and all those movies, and they were family, and I stayed in touch with them until the very last days. In fact, the first rainy day of every year, I would have lunch with the director, Ernest Schoedsack, and he lost his eyes in World War II, and he directed that blind.
Wow.
Yes, he did. And he was marvelous, and they were a family to me, and always will be. I mean, they were probably the most unusual motion picture makers I've ever known.
Marion Cooper, he was really the authentic Indiana Jones.
He was.
Guy who went all over the world, and
he was a real general, and
Yeah.
and Monty Schoedsack, who we called him Monty, he had been a soldier of fortune. He had even fought with Lawrence of Arabia.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow.
And hunted Bengal tigers, and he was 6'6".
My size.
Right.
All right. So I know Ben Johnson. You worked with him. He was one of the movie cowboys that was actually an authentic cowboy.
He was authentic, and it was so cute. The first day on Mighty Joe Young, I said, Ben, how did you get in movies? And he said, you remember that there picture, The Outlaw? And I said, yes. I thought he was going to say I did one of the leads in it. He said, I brought the horses out for that there picture.
That there. That sounds like that.
He did.
Some of your other movies, Beneath the 12-Mile Reef, great film. Got a fan right there.
Thank
with
you.
Bob Wagner, Gilbert Roland, and written by the late great Buzz Bezarides. Any recollections of working on that
You
shoot?
said late. Did he die?
Yes, Buzz passed away. 3 months ago?
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
3
sorry
months
to hear
ago,
that.
at the ripe age of 98, and he
No, I
lived
saw
long.
him just recently. I mean, probably in the last 4 months.
Right.
It's wonderful. That was a very hard picture to make. I was seasick half the time. It was hot. It was humid. It was a very rough picture to make.
Was that in Florida? Or?
That was in Key West in
Key West,
Florida,
right,
and
yeah.
we did all our underwater shots. And if you've ever been to Key West in the summertime, it's so humid you can't breathe. It's like breathing underwater. That was a roughie, and I used to get all the tough location pictures.
Right. That was a great picture. Of course, Comeback Little Sheba, nominated Best Supporting Actress, a wonderful picture. Burt Lancaster, Shirley Booth, and I think that you made that for Hal Wallace.
And Danny Mann, who was a wonderful director.
Right.
I learned a lot from Danny, and I was so fortunate to work for Elia Kazan, who directed Man on a Tightrope. He was
Right.
the best director, and he discovered Marlon Brando and Jimmy Dean and so many others. And
Yes.
all these people stayed my friends until the very end.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That says a lot about them. It says a lot about you. That's
I
wonderful.
loved them very
That's
much.
wonderful. That's wonderful. Now here we are, 2007. You have this amazing body of work, this amazing career. I mean, if you put Terry Moore into Google, you come up with all kinds of things on the internet of your career and things that you've done. What are you doing currently? You talked about your producing the Howard Hughes television film. I know you're doing some other things as well.
Well, I'm not allowed to talk about it, but I've got my co-star here, and I wish she would stand up and take a bow. Gita Hall.
Gita Hall.
And we're doing something very, we can't talk about it unfortunately, but we're doing a series together.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
And we're going to be shooting soon, but, my son is here. I wish he'd stand up, who wrote the Howard Hughes script. Grant, would you stand up? And you probably remember him from Killer Clowns and Hard Bodies he starred in, and
Got the production team here tonight and
Yes.
the family. Wonderful.
and I hope there's going to be questions from the audience.
Yes, I was just going to that now. Questions for Terry?
He was just very much of a gentleman. A very, very nice man. I kind of hung out with the bad boys, with with Keenan and Lee, and he was very private but extremely nice, and a wonderful actor to work with, very professional.
He was another one that left us too soon.
Wait, yes,
Yeah,
very.
he had a bad heart. Yeah.
Yes. I'll tell you, really not. He made up that character. Harold was a very good friend of my son's and mine, and spent a lot of time with him. And that's where people kind of thought that Howard Hughes was like, and they caricatured him from that book. But Harold didn't know Howard, and so it was really a made-up character.
Yes, sir.
The second picture I did with Bob Wagner was Between Heaven and Hell.
That's right.
And Beneath the 12-Mile Reef was the first CinemaScope movie ever made. And King of the Khyber Rifles was the second CinemaScope movie ever made. Then they made The Robe, and they held our two movies back and released The Robe first, but it was the third one
That's
made.
interesting.
Yes.
King of the Khyber Rivals, that was Tyrone Power.
Tyrone Power.
Give us a little soundbite on Tyrone Power. He's
Ah,
you know what's interesting? Every female star I've talked to that acted opposite Tyrone Power, they get the glazed look.
he was the kindest man I ever knew, and probably one of the most spiritual, and I still dream about him.
Oh, Tyrone.
Tyrone. I mean, he was such a down-to-earth, I can only say he was the kindest man I ever knew.
Wonderful.
Yes.
That's a heck of a compliment.
And he treated everybody the same.
Wonderful, wonderful. Any other questions for Terry?
My three favorite roles, my very favorite role I would say was Return of October that I did with Glenn Ford. And that's where I got my name, Terry. And I'm the first Terry, by the way. Anybody you know has been born after me, named Terry. I started the name, and Harry Cohen took it from that movie and gave it to me. And my second favorite role was Man on a Tightrope, because working for Elia Kazan, who was such a great director, and opposite Frederick March, who won 2 Academy Awards and was so wonderful. And then I think I enjoyed King of the Khyber Rifles because I adored and loved Tyrone Power so much. He was wonderful. He rehearsed a lot, but he'd send us off to rehearse, alone. And then he said, I think he said, that scene where Marlon Brando throws his arms around Blanche's legs, he said, I get credit for it, so whatever you come back with, that's fine. And he had a way of feeling, no matter, sometimes you feel, you're really great, and your head can get big, and you think, oh, I can do anything, no matter, and sometimes you think you can't do anything. but no matter how great you ever thought you were, he made you feel better than you ever dreamt you could be. He took you beyond anything else, and he treated everybody differently. He knew just how psychologically how to treat each person and how to bring the right emotions out of them. I would have done anything for him. Jumped off buildings, whatever he asked me to do, I was willing to do. That's how much faith I had in him, and that's what he brought out in you.
Thank you.
Probably when I was nominated for an Academy Award.
Right.
That was just really thrilling and something I didn't expect. And I just had no idea, and I was so young, and it was just so, and yet it scared me to death. I thought, I'm too young, I'm not ready for this. We had a choreographer, but it was so wonderful working with Fred, and he's another one I stayed friends with right up to the end. He'd send me Christmas trees, and he was the most wonderful, of course, person on the face of the earth. He was also just a beautiful human being who I had loved and adored very much, and of course a dream to dance with. I mean, I'm so proud to say I danced with Fred Astaire.
That is a legacy. That is a legacy. Well, Terry, it has been wonderful. The movie was wonderful. You are wonderful. And we did this, I think, about 4 years ago, Two of a Kind in Palm Springs. I feel honored to be back on stage with you again, and we're going to have to do this again. You were terrific. Thank you so much for coming. Put it together for Terry Moore, please.